Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. The Treasury Department announces its latest sanctions on the Iranian regime. This as U.S. officials take the first steps toward possible nuclear talks with Iran. The U.S. today securing custody of a man who allegedly killed 4 U.S. personnel in Benghazi, Libya. Why the Trump administration says the 2012 attack still is relevant to this day. Savannah Guthrie's brother speaks out for the first time last night. He says the family wants to talk to whoever may have taken their mother. President Trump doubling down on his fight for election integrity. He's urging Republicans to pass the Save America Act, which would require citizenship and photo ID for voting. The Secretary of Energy delivers remarks about the reliability of the grid and affordability amid winter storms. He says the focus of the department should be on people, not politics. And over in Italy, the Winter Olympics have begun. The opening ceremonies are in progress, with the U.S. sending a number of star athletes ready to represent their country.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. President Trump is doubling down on his administration's fight for free and fair elections. Ahead of a House vote next week, he's urging Republicans to pass the Save America Act. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent, Mari Otsu, at the North Lawn of the White House. Mari, good afternoon.
Don, good afternoon. That's right, and President Trump is indeed doubling down. Last night, he's declaring America's elections, quote, rigged, stolen, and, quote, a laughingstock globally. That's as he's calling on Republicans to pass the Save America Act, which is a bill that calls for all voters to show voter identification and proof of American citizenship. Take a look.
You go to the polls, you show, yes, my name is so-and-so, and I live in the country. I'm here, I can vote. They say, that's not allowed. And no, everyone's trying to figure it out. And they do something to win. You know what it is? They cheat.
That Republicans and Democrats in Congress should pass the Save America Act. This piece of legislation is going to ensure that states are abiding by federal election law by removing non-citizens from their voter rolls. In addition, the Save America Act will require voter ID to vote, and it will require proof of citizenship to register to vote. These are very common sense policies and proposals that 89% of our country agree with. So that's what the president is talking about.
A new Pew Research poll from 2025 does show overwhelming support for voter ID. According to the poll, 71% of Democrats, 95% of Republicans, and 83% of Americans agree. And this latest push from President Trump is coming just a week after FBI agents executed a federal search warrant at Fulton County's elections hub in Georgia. Last week, they seized hundreds of boxes containing original physical ballots from the 2020 election, voter rolls, tabulator tapes from the voting machines there, ballot images, and other records. The director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was seen at that elections hub in Georgia last week, which then prompted scrutiny and questions from the media. But President Trump and the White House say that Gabbard's presence was necessary due to the fact that they're currently investigating foreign influence in the 2020 election. Take a look.
I've seen a lot of the media in this room get very caught up with the semantics of why Tulsi Gabbard is there. I will tell you why, and the president agrees with this, because election security is essential to national security. And as the director of national intelligence, it is a part of Ms. Gabbard's role to make sure that American elections are free of foreign interference and that American elections are safe and secure.
But let me ask you this. If China or any of these countries are involved in our elections, that would bring her into it. Look, we have to have honest elections. Yeah. There should be nothing wrong with the fact that they went in, got ballots from a while ago, and they're going to look at them. And now they're going to find out the true winner of that state. Yeah. And you know what? If there was cheating, which there was, but if there was cheating, it should be found, because we can't let it happen.
While President Trump has suggested potential Chinese interference in the 2020 election, a DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard herself says in a letter to Democrats on the Senate and House Intelligence Committees that her role is to ensure U.S. election security, including counterintelligence and foreign and other malign influence and cybersecurity. Don, back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you. The U.S. today holding indirect talks with the Iranian regime, with Oman's foreign minister acting as a mediator. Iran's top diplomat said the talks were off to a good start and are set to continue. The Omani foreign minister met separately with U.S. and Iranian delegations. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner led the U.S. envoy. The main goal is to overcome sharp differences over Tehran's nuclear program, but the U.S. wants to expand the talks. Washington's objective is also to discuss Iran's ballistic missiles, support for terrorist groups, and the treatment of the Iranian people. Also today, America's virtual embassy in Iran issued a security alert. It urged U.S. citizens to leave Iran and prepare an exit plan that does not rely on U.S. government help. The warning comes as concerns mount over a possible military confrontation between the two countries. Just hours after the talks wrapped up, the U.S. Treasury Department announced its latest sanctions on Iran. The Treasury Department said the sanctions target an international network that facilitates the shipments of Iranian crude oil to communist China. The operations involve millions of barrels of oil and are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Multiple entities and individuals in China, India, and the UAE, as well as several vessels, now face sanctions. The Treasury Department said the Iranian regime uses its oil revenues to fund its nuclear program, destabilizing activities and regional terrorist groups. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent added, quote, "The United States is committed to aggressively targeting any attempt by Iran to secure funding for these malign activities." To discuss the U.S. strategy for Iran, we're bringing in foreign policy analyst Bart Marcois. He's a former career diplomat and Energy Department official, also a news commentator creating daily bite-sized news analysis called A Minute with Bart. So Bart, good afternoon to you. Now, the Iranian media said the summit ended with a willingness to continue, and we know the U.S. is demanding, no nuclear for Iran and also limits on its ballistic missile program, while Iran, on the other hand, wants to continue enriching uranium. Do you see any compromise here being made over these issues?
No, not at all, because the Iranians are playing a false game. The fact that they won't even engage on the issues that matter to the United States, in addition to the nuclear issue, tells you that they're negotiating in bad faith. They're not negotiating, they're just stalling. The US insisted on discussing proxies, the Houthis, the Hezbollah, Hamas, the proxies that Iranians use around the world to carry out their terrorist activities. They wanted to talk about, as you mentioned, ballistic missiles. They wanted to talk about the treatment of the Iranian people. The Iranians said, no, just nuclear things. So they haven't even agreed to the scope yet. And Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi left and said, yeah, it went great. Everything is fine. And he knows very well it didn't go well. He's just trying to set up an international narrative that says, hey, we were negotiating, the US attacked us.
Okay, so you're saying Iran is not going to compromise, but is it true or is it not true that Iran is going into these talks from a weaker position than normal? Because, given the state of its economy and internal issues like the protests.
Yes, they're weaker than they've ever been. It's their currency is running at 1.5 million, I think it's reals, to the dollar. You cannot sustain an economy like that. The reason people are demonstrating in the streets, or were until they were murdered, they figured, we're going to die quickly or slowly. We may as well die quickly as we try to fight for our freedom. They have no air defense. Israel destroyed their air defense systematically last year. They don't have nuclear weapons anymore. They know that their hardened bunkers are not doing them any good anymore. And they know that between Israel and the United States, we know where each one of them is. We know where they're living. We know where their families live. We know where everything they care about is, and they are negotiating from a position of complete weakness.
Okay, can you talk to us about the stakes here? President Trump has said if a deal is not reached, the next attack will be far worse. And the Iranian leader said that a U.S. attack on Iran will stoke a regional war. So, what are the stakes here? Is Iran bluffing?
I don't think Iran is bluffing. I think that they have a lot of aces up their sleeve. Most of them involve terrorist activities, terrorist sleeper cells. They have people embedded in countries all over the world. They have people embedded right here in the United States that they expect to activate. But what they're forgetting, and those things are very serious. Please don't think I'm underplaying their capabilities. But what they're forgetting is that those sleeper cells, if the sleeper cells see the head of the snake cut off and they see that the regime has been destroyed, their own fanaticism may wane a little bit, and their dedication to their cause may slacken a little bit, and they may be less willing to carry out their assignments that they may have received 3 years ago, or 18 months or 10 years ago. Uh, Russia had the same problem with their sleeper agents. Many of their sleeper agents came here and decided that they liked the United States better. They liked life here better. And when Mother Russia called on them to carry out some act of sabotage or espionage, they quietly just disappeared.
Okay, but the Trump administration has already bombed 3 major Iranian nuclear sites, setting back Iran's nuclear program by up to 2 years, according to the Pentagon. What are the actual risks of Iran having a nuclear weapon?
Oh, they're immense, because these are people who believe that only a complete destruction of Israel and of all of Israel's allies and of Western civilization will bring about the glorious end of the world and the return of the hidden imam. It's a messianic kind of figure. And so if they destroy everything, they don't fear being destroyed in the process or reciprocally, because this is part of a messianic imperative that they have to fulfill. So they, uniquely almost among all the people of the world, they are the most dangerous regime to have a nuclear weapon. Even the North Koreans have some rational fear of reciprocity.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You said earlier that Iran will not compromise. I mean, that leads me to think potentially a deal may not happen. And President Trump says if there is no deal, then he's going to attack, and the attack will be far worse. And you're saying that Iran is not bluffing. So if we put this together, where are we headed, Bart?
It certainly looks like we're headed toward war. As a diplomat, I have to say that sometimes when you're negotiating with a particularly recalcitrant opponent, they have to look into the brink. They have to look over the brink of and into the abyss to decide. It's a gut check. Are you really willing to die? Are you really willing to see all your power evaporate, all your wealth, all your control, everything you've built up over the last 40 years, 45 years? Are you willing to see that just evaporate in a flash? Or will you be reasonable and finally give up your terrorist way of life? I don't know. I think that President Trump will keep his word. I think that he will exercise extreme patience, as he has already. Many people are very frustrated with him for having waited this long, but he is making it clear that what he really wants is peace. But a lasting peace cannot be achieved when you have an opponent, an enemy that is sworn to your destruction. And if he will not back down, that enemy will not back down from destroying you, then you have to destroy that enemy if you want peace. It's as ancient as human life on the earth.
Okay, just finally, can you reiterate that point of what the U.S. wants for Iran? What is the end game for Iran? You said peace. Can you elaborate a bit more? Does Trump want
Sure.
new leadership as well? He has said it. It needs new leadership.
Yeah, I think it does need new leadership, but he would do with Iran as he's doing with Venezuela. All the bad guys in Venezuela are still there, except for Maduro and his wife. The people in charge are as bad as Maduro, but as long as they do what the United States wants them to do, Trump will allow them to stay. It's a new what he wants is a new pattern of behavior. He wants them to stop supporting terrorism all around the world, stop funding every bad program in the United States and in Western Europe, stop supporting their terrorist proxies, give up once and for all their nuclear program, their nuclear project, and their ballistic missiles, and stop murdering their own citizens. I don't see this current leadership ever acceding to those demands. And if I may say, you didn't ask, but if I may say, there's a serious implication for China in all of this. If you have a minute, I'll go into that.
Please, let's hear what you have to say on China.
So one of the things that Iran always threatens is that they will shut down the Strait of Hormuz, that they will, block it, that they'll keep all shipping out of it. Well, China gets nearly 80% of its oil. It comes through the Strait of Hormuz. It gets 20% from Iran and another probably 30 or 40% from Iraq and Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Oman. It's if Iran gets into a war and they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, it's China that will suffer more than anybody else in the world. They will have their oil supply from everywhere except Russia and Malaysia and Brazil cut off. So that's going to make the Iranians very hesitant to carry out some of their more extreme threats. And China has been a big backer of Iran. And of course, if the Iranian regime changes, that's going to make the Chinese have to pay market price for their oil from Iran instead of buying smuggled oil at a discount. So there's some serious calculation going on there with China. And I suspect somebody in the Trump administration has a back channel to China and is discussing this with them as well.
Right, that is a great point you made there about China. Bart, well, thank you for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Don. I hope you have a great afternoon and evening.
You as well. And as the New START treaty expires, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says it marks a new era for nuclear arms control, one that must confront both Russia and China. Rubio said the agreement had already been undermined when Moscow stopped implementing the treaty in 2023, and he warned that China's rapidly expanding nuclear buildup makes the old treaty framework obsolete. Rubio cited estimates that Beijing's arsenal could exceed 1,000 warheads by 2030. The Trump administration is now pushing for multilateral talks. Officials say any future deal must include China, enforce strict compliance, and be negotiated from what they call a position of strength. Meanwhile, in Geneva, the State Department accused China of secret nuclear testing.
I can reveal that the U.S. government is aware that China has conducted nuclear explosive tests, including preparing for tests with designated yields in the hundreds of tons. The PLA sought to conceal testing by obfuscating the nuclear explosions because it recognized these tests violate test ban commitments. China has used decoupling, a method to decrease the effectiveness of seismic monitoring to hide their activities from the world. China conducted one such yield-producing nuclear test on June 22nd of 2020. I should add that exactly 0 Chinese nuclear weapons were covered by New START. And as we sit here today, China's entire nuclear arsenal has no limits, no transparency, no declarations, and no controls.
The undersecretary restated projections that China will have over 1,000 nuclear warheads in the next 4 years. He also said Russia is supporting this buildup by helping China develop weapons-grade fission material. Diplomats at the conference said the U.S. allegations were new and concerning. And the U.S. today securing custody of a man who allegedly killed 4 U.S. personnel in Benghazi, Libya in 2012. The Department of Justice says the arrest goes to show that the Trump administration never forgot about the horrific attack. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the story.
And we have never stopped seeking justice for that crime against our nation.
Attorney General Pam Bondi announcing that an alleged terrorist is now in U.S. custody on Friday. On September 11, 2012, an attack on a U.S. embassy in Benghazi, Libya, killed 4 U.S. service members. Those were Ambassador Chris Stevens, State Department official Sean Smith, and CIA contractors Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods.
We have never forgotten those heroes. Today, I'm proud to announce that the FBI has arrested one of the key participants behind the Benghazi attack.
The suspect is Zubair al-Bakush. Fox News published this footage showing he landed at Andrews Air Force Base at 3 a.m. on Friday. Bondi says he's now in FBI custody. On the night of September 11, 2012, at least 20 terrorists armed with AK-47s and grenade launchers breached the gate of the Benghazi consulate and set buildings on fire, ultimately killing the 4 service members.
Al-Bakush will now face American justice on American soil. We will prosecute this alleged terrorist to the fullest extent of the law.
Bondi says al-Bakush is facing charges related to murder, terrorism, arson, and others. Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
And that was NTD's Mari Otsu reporting from the White House. Savannah Guthrie's brother Camron Guthrie on social media last night asked whoever is holding their mother Nancy Guthrie to make contact. This is just one of the updates today on the search for NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie's 84-year-old mother. NTD's Arlene Richards has the latest.
This is Camron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you.
Camron Guthrie, the brother of Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie, released a video statement Thursday evening on behalf of his family to those individuals who may be responsible for their mother's disappearance. He said the family is waiting for contact, but first they want to know if the ransom note senders have their mom. It's the second call the family has made directly to the alleged kidnappers or suspects. Meanwhile, the Pima County Sheriff's Department posted on Friday that their office has not scheduled any more briefings. This follows a similar message by Sheriff Chris Nanos on Thursday at a press conference.
Right now, I have no plans to schedule any further press conferences unless we have some real evidence or something to bring up to you. It's pretty pointless to just keep hounding the same things over and over.
He said law enforcement is working really hard and urged the media to be patient. The Sheriff's Department said in their post that they would contact the media right away if something breaks. A former sheriff from Pinal County, Arizona, told NTD on Thursday these investigations take time.
It takes a lot of resources, and you use a lot of different investigative techniques to hopefully find that missing person.
In an unrelated press conference on Friday, Attorney General Pam Bondi said she was heartbroken over the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Breaks my heart for Savannah and for her family. I know she's asked for all of our prayers. So please pray for her beautiful mom, pray for her family that she's returned home.
Authorities said Nancy Guthrie was last seen at her home around 9:30 p.m. on Saturday. The FBI on Thursday said they had arrested an imposter who tried to take advantage of the ransom notes. Fox News reports that court documents show he is a Los Angeles man named Derek Colella. The sender of the note demanded millions of dollars in Bitcoin for her safe return. An initial deadline of 5 p.m. Thursday has passed, but according to Camron Guthrie's video, they haven't heard from anybody. A second demand is set for Monday. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And next, we're going to discuss Nancy Guthrie's case further. Joining us now is retired Las Vegas Police Lieutenant Randy Sutton. He's also the founder and chairman of the Wounded Blue. So, Randy, thank you as always for joining us today. And as we heard in the previous report, one of the two deadlines reportedly in a ransom note has passed, and a second deadline is reportedly on Monday. What do you think are the most important things that investigators will be looking for right now?
Well, the county sheriff is the agency responsible for this investigation. However, the FBI is playing an increasing role in this investigation because they have capabilities that the state simply does not have and the county does not have. They have amazing forensic capabilities as well as technological capabilities, such as cell phone investigative leads and tools, and an incredible forensic analysis unit. So they are really actively looking at all of the aspects here. When it comes down to digital surveillance, they did locate a witness, a neighbor that is now reporting a suspicious white van seen in the area during this time period that they have now reported. So this is a painstaking investigation now. The fact that it's gone on for days is not a good sign for the safety of the victim here. And we do know that she's medically challenged. We know that without medication, it will cause hardship and possibly severe consequences. So as the days tick by, this investigation takes on an even more dramatic turn.
Right, you're right. 6 days has been passed. We don't have footage. We don't have publicly released recordings. No persons of interest. What stands out to you about this case right now? What's your biggest unanswered question?
The lack of leads is really what I find startling. The fact that the home, the doorbell camera was removed, the forensic evidence that was found, the blood evidence that belonged to the victim. These are very, very troubling factors. And this was a highly planned operation. I believe that there's more than one person involved, but the slow pace of this investigation I find concerning. And also, by the way, I mean, I hate to be critical of law enforcement, but watching the sheriff give what I can only refer to this as a confused press conference, it kind of undermines the confidence in the law enforcement response. And so, he has faced some pretty harsh criticism, and unfortunately, I believe it's deserved.
You know, I was talking about this case with a colleague just a couple days ago, and he said he found it strange that if this, in fact, is a ransom situation, we haven't really had the captors come out and ask for demands. Nothing officially confirmed. You would think that, if somebody wants money, they would make it as public as possible. So some very strange things this colleague of mine brought up.
Yeah, no, that's true. We live in a technologically driven society now. I go back to the Charles Lindbergh baby case, right? That occurred at the beginning of the century, um, last century, I should say. And you look at the public eye on it. It captured the world's imagination, just as this is doing now. But back then you had to write a note in order to try and get a ransom. But here's one thing that has been overlooked, and that is that since if they do indeed have this victim in their custody, they have ways to contact the family. They know the emails. She knows the phone numbers, and you buy a burner phone and you make a ransom demand. I find it uh, uh, a little concerning that if this is truly a ransom kidnapping, they haven't made that much of an effort to collect ransom.
Okay, what do you make of that second plea video? Why do you think another one was released yesterday by the family?
Because there's desperation. The family is beside itself. You can see, I mean, it was a very, very emotional video that the family did together, and that was cobbled together, um, but with the aid of the FBI. There's no doubt in my mind by the verbiage being used that this was something that was done in concert with the FBI. But I think the desperation of the family led to the second one because they have not had a ransom demand that they could actually respond to. Now, here's another thing that I think the public needs to know, and that is that law enforcement wants to catch these people. They want to put them in prison. The family wants their mom back, and they can be sometimes at cross purposes. But at the end of the day, it is up to the family to make a determination if they want to pay ransom, and it would be done in conjunction with law enforcement.
Okay, Randy, I just want to ask you one more thing. You mentioned earlier you find it startling the lack of leads. Why do you think that is? What are the challenges? Because if we think in recent memory, other cases, for example, Charlie Kirk, the killing of the CEO, Brian Thompson, there were leads almost immediately or within a couple of days. So what are the challenges this investigation is facing?
Yeah, well, this was a very well-planned operation. The lack of leads is startling, however, that you would think that with all of the technology that is at play here, all of the possible surveillance cameras that are in the area, that something would have broken by now. And so, I all I can say is that the lack of leads is hampering this investigation. They've got the capabilities to follow these leads, and I'm sure that many leads are being followed up on. I mean, there's the forensic evidence, and there's the whatever technological evidence they have, including the video that was that we know that it existed at one time, and trying to capture that video. So this is hampering this investigation in a major way.
Okay, well, Randy, really appreciate your comments on this topic. Thank you for your time.
Sure thing.
A great day for investors. The stock market is surging with the Dow Jones Industrial Average hitting 50,000 for the very first time. The blue chip index surged some 1,100 points or 2.2% today. It climbed above 50,000 points during trading for the first time in its 129-year history. The broader S&P 500 rose 1.7%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite rose 1.9% today. The Dow is more focused on sectors like financials and industrials and less exposed to the tech sector. Tech stocks are bouncing back following early losses. Nvidia and Broadcom drove the surge. Gains today came amid a 4-year straight bull market in the U.S. Wall Street appears optimistic about the U.S. economy and is hopeful for interest rates cuts from the Fed later this year. President Trump also reacted to the stock market, saying, quote, "Congratulations, America." And joining us now to discuss is Joseph Trevisani, economic and currency analyst at FX Street. Joseph, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Don. Nice to see you. Have a little bit warmer weather here, so it's looking very nice right now.
Right. Hopefully the snow doesn't stay too much longer. So, Joseph, let me ask you this. What are you seeing as the driver behind this rally? A lot of analysts have already chipped in, but what do you think?
Couple of things. I think we have a bit of a relief that there was concern, say a week, 2 weeks ago, a lot of concern that there was about to be a war in the Middle East, or at least we were about to perhaps attack Iran. That does not seem to be happening at the moment. It may still happen, but that is one relief. Whatever you want to say about the pros and cons, the rights and wrongs of this, wars and military action at that scale make markets extremely nervous, and with very good reason. You also have an economy that's growing very strongly. You probably have about a 4 or more % for the last 3 quarters on average. That's very good. You had a tremendous sell-off, primarily in techs, that is perhaps, you might say, unwarranted, in the sense that there is still, I think, a great deal of potential to the wonderful 7, whatever you want to call them, for the AI and other technology future. So with those things, I think you got a very, very strong snapback today. People are saying, hey, these technology stocks are much cheaper than they were. Let's buy them. And that fueled it.
Okay, so are you saying this rally is driven more by fundamentals? You did bring up the Magnificent Seven, right? So is it fundamentals or driven by sentiment?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, there are fundamentals here that are strong. As I said, the economy is growing. We'll average out for the 3 quarters after the first of last year at more than 4%. That is very strong growth. You can say what you want about it, but it's real. So once you have that, and you have what seems to be at this point essentially unlimited potential for the application of AI programs, devices, there is an enormous amount of growth that is in train here. And so for that much, I think it very much is fundamentals. As far as sentiment goes, I think, as I said, you had a relief from the fact that we don't seem to be about to attack Iran. Again, points aside, from an economic and markets point of view, that's something that markets like.
Okay, what would you say is the health of this rally, the breadth here? How does it compare to the Magnificent Seven-driven market that we've seen before?
That's true. One thing that people probably don't realize as much as they should is how much averages are actually driven by a few number of very, very active and very, very pricey stocks. And that's certainly true of the tech rally right here. But behind that, you have a potential, and I think more than potential, for broad-based growth. What is 4% growth? What is 4.2% growth? 4.5% growth for those for 3 quarters? This is broad-based growth. It is not simply because the Magnificent Seven are growing very, very rapidly and their price appreciation is there. There's broad-based growth behind this. So I think there are both are what's making it such a powerful rally.
What role does the expectation of rate cuts play in this rally?
The expectation of what?
Rate cuts.
Rate, yes. Well, I think you're going to get some of those, but that's not something I think that's on the minds of the market right now, because you're not going to get them anytime before May, certainly, I think, when we have a new Fed chairman, So I don't think that's really a factor right now. Is that a long-term factor? Yes, it might very well be. But that's not entering into this rally, I don't think.
Okay, Joseph, just one final question. Any indications of a bubble in this rally, whether we're talking about sentiment towards AI or other things?
Yes. Any rally that is as powerful as this and setting new records as it does can always be characterized as a bubble, especially when it reverses and people start taking profits. However, I do not think that this rally, is a typical bubble in that it's based almost purely on speculative excess. I don't think that's the case. There is real economic value here, and there is real economic potential. Will it play out for all of these companies as well as the rally has predicted? No, probably not. Some will be better, some will be worse, some will end up being losers. But there is genuine economic reality here. So I would say, no, this is not a bubble.
Okay, really appreciate your analysis, Joseph. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Always good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Secretary of the Energy, Chris Wright, delivered remarks today about the U.S. power grid reliability and affordability amid winter storms. In addition to breaking down how the grid functions, Wright said the Trump administration's energy policy is focusing on people, not politics.
Today, the policies that get in the way of reasonable energy development and mess up the math are things focused around climate change. We've done almost nothing to change global greenhouse gas emissions, as close to nothing as you can get from endless regulations on electricity that have just driven up prices and driven down reliability in the name of climate change. This impacts American lives dramatically. That's why President Trump was elected. President Trump got elected to bring the focus back to humans about energy, about math, about facts, not silly and, again, unfortunately, innumerate climate politics.
Wright played down the effectiveness of wind and solar for powering the grid. Instead, Wright advocated for maintaining coal and nuclear plants to meet peak demand and reduce costs.
The goal should be we want the most reliable, most affordable electricity for Americans. That's what drove electricity policy for 100 years. And then we got off track 15 years ago, and we don't focus on that. We just focus on we're going to decarbonize our electricity grid by building wind and solar. It doesn't work, but it makes electricity more expensive. It makes the grid less reliable.
On Capitol Hill, the debate around ICE funding is heating up. Democrats doubling down on demands that Republicans says are unrealistic. Could another partial government shutdown be on the horizon? NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
The battle over ICE funding heating up as the clock ticks on.
The number one reform that we need are no more sanctuary cities and to have local leaders cooperate with federal officials.
It's got to be strong, it's got to be tough, it's got to rein in ICE in very serious ways and end the violence.
Days ago, senators gave themselves 2 weeks to find common ground on ICE changes. Democrats have laid out several demands publicly.
Wear identifying badges, do not wear masks. When they go to someone's door to try and get into a home, they use a judicial warrant, and they don't conduct random roving patrols or engage in racial profiling.
But with just 1 week before DHS funding expires, Republicans say Democrats may have made their demands public, but aren't coming to the table for talks.
Yet we heard nothing. And so last night, even after our attempts to have that conversation, we then yet once again see a list of demands grow from 3 to 10 without any communication. Look, that's not the way good faith negotiations begin or end.
With no closed-door talks ongoing, a bipartisan deal looks unlikely. Senate Leader John Thune describes Democrats' demands as unrealistic.
This is not a blank check situation where Republicans just to agree to a list of Democrat demands. But as of right now, we aren't anywhere close to having any sort of an agreement that would enable us to fund the Department of Homeland Security. And so, Mr. President, I would hope that the Democrats will come to the table.
The leader now readying another short-term extension for DHS funds. Even if the DHS funding runs out, Republicans point out that ICE will still be funded longer than other agencies.
What they're essentially endorsing is defunding FEMA and defunding TSA, because the ICE operation money, the detention facilities, the money for the border walls, all been front-loaded in the working families tax cut from last summer. That's just a reality. So they don't have leverage here.
The White House now pushing a demand of their own. The president wants lawmakers to add to the next funding bill the SAVE Act, which aims to require voter ID and reduce voter fraud in federal elections.
The SAVE Act directs states to remove non-citizens from their voter rolls, and we know in states across the country the president is right.
It's a request Democrats have rejected. The president on Thursday called for all Republicans to fight for voter ID, eliminating non-citizen voting, and to end mail ballots. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
A federal judge is temporarily blocking Homeland Security from using taxpayer data for immigration enforcement. U.S. District Judge Indira Tawani ruled yesterday that a cooperation agreement allowing the IRS to share taxpayer information with DHS and ICE likely violates federal law. The case was brought by several Massachusetts community groups. The injunction will remain in place while litigation continues. The ruling adds to a growing split among federal courts over whether IRS data can be used in immigration enforcement. Joining us now is Scott Mikowski, former deputy director of the ICE field office in New York. He's also a visiting fellow for deportation studies at the Oversight Project. So Scott, thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon to you. So, you know, Democrats are in part calling for a ban on masks for federal agents in most circumstances. Is masking by federal immigration agents a new practice, and why is this being implemented?
Well, thank you for having me. I'd like to say that from a tactical standpoint, it was never an issue. We started to see a lot of doxing and a lot of this online harassment in the end of 2017, 2018. It wasn't as bad, but I would tell you that with the new trend of protesters interfering, obstructing, the doxing, online cyberbullying, threats to federal agents, it definitely increased.
Okay, so there's an argument out there, Scott, that wearing masks decreases trust and increases fear. What is your thoughts on that?
it's a double-edged sword. I mean, listen, the only reason why the one side wants people demasked is so that they could dox them. And they've proved it time and time again. This isn't about identifying anybody. They want to use facial recognition. They want to use AI. They want to use these things to dox people. It's been proven. There's plenty of ICE, ERO, and HSI agents that are out there. They're working the streets every day. They're not wearing masks. Now in Minnesota, in the Midwest, you see it more, but it's freezing cold out there. So I'm not going to use that as an excuse, but prior to this, yes. And there's a lot of undercover agents and a lot of undercover operations, and they wear that for their own protection. But, you know, they're being doxxed. I mean, there's been data that has been linked. 4,500 agents have been doxxed by a whistleblower that released information. There's information being released by hotel workers. The list goes on and on and on. And that's all they really want to do is they want to shame the agents. They want to shame the officers, shame their families and their children.
You're absolutely right that this is a double-edged sword, and we must consider the safety of the agents. So I brought a clip here with me. This week earlier, Border Czar Tom Homan said there will be an immediate drawdown of 700 law enforcement personnel in Minnesota. So I just want us to take a look here of Homan speaking on Wednesday.
That's why this partnership and this coordination is so important. We'd much rather work in the safety and security of jail. Look, I go to bed every night wondering if every one of our officers go home safely. I also am concerned that every person we're looking for is taken into custody safely. The best way to do that is to have a target enforcement operation and well-planned operation.
So I just want your thoughts on this. What impact will this drawdown have on the safety of the federal agents? Because, you know, fewer agents, does that mean fewer protests and therefore safer environments or something else, Scott?
I would say first and foremost, you know, Tom Homan's in that position for a reason. He understands operational needs. What I would say is a lot of this is the Minneapolis Police Department, St. Paul Police Department, all these other police departments that let the obstruction, the interference go on for so long. I mean, they were part of the problem. Mr. Homan wants to draw down and wants to get back to targeted enforcement. And I think that's a smart thing to do. And like he said, I mean, that's what we're good at. I mean, people are very confused about operations. I mean, ICE is, you know, relatively new in the sense they were organized in 2003, but we've been doing this in legacy INS. We've been making arrests, you know, so when I hear people talk about all of this rhetoric, it's nonsense. We do targeted enforcement operations, and it's never been this bad.
Okay, so you're saying it's never been this bad. Can you just contrast for us in detail? How has cooperation changed over the years between local authorities, state leaders with federal agents and the federal government?
Well, I think politicians have weaponized law enforcement. I mean, when you have governors out there that come out and they institute sanctuary city policies, state policies that forbid you to do any cooperation whatsoever with a federal law enforcement agency that's in charge of taking the worst of the worst off the street, I think that just shows you how idiotic it sounds. I mean, if ICE agents are getting people from jails safely and securely, they wouldn't have to be as many people on the street looking for them. I mean, this is not a game, okay? This is law enforcement. And the men and women of ICE, the Border Patrol, all the other agencies that are out there supporting this operation, right? They shouldn't be used as linchpins between politicians and law enforcement. When police chiefs outright tell people, listen, this is lunacy, you know, politicians should be listening to them. I mean, it's crazy to think that you don't want to cooperate, taking people, the very people they say they're protecting, they're putting in harm's way. They're releasing these people knowing that they're wanted back into the very communities they committed crimes in. So, you know, the victims are there, the victims' families are there. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Right, and I just want to add to what you just said right now. The agents are simply following orders. They're just doing their jobs. I mean, why target agents? That's my question. Okay, Scott, I just have one more thing I liked your comments on. I was talking about this issue with a guest a few days ago, and he said the drawdown is essentially equivalent to conceding control. But Tom Homan says this is smarter enforcement, not less enforcement. I just want your comments on this.
I think there were some concessions here. Tom Homan had communicated with the officials there. They wanted cooperation. They wanted them to work, into the jails, get people out of the jails. The police need to step up and to do the crowd control to make sure that everybody in the community is safe. I think his tactic will work. I do think that drawing down and refocusing our efforts will be better in the long run for everybody.
Okay, let's wait and see. But really appreciate your comments today, Scott. A pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Amid news of the China-linked suspected biolab in Vegas, Florida, unveiled a new China prevention unit that will combat threats posed by the Chinese Communist Party to Florida consumers. Joining us to discuss the Chinese Communist Party's United Front strategy within the U.S. is Taylor Hathorn, visiting fellow at the Independent Women's Center for American Safety and Security. Taylor, good afternoon and happy Friday to you. So the Congressional CCP Select Committee commented on Florida's new unit, saying the CCP doesn't just target the federal government, that it also targets our states, cities, schools, and families. What is your initial reaction to this?
I think the state of Florida is really wise and very prudent in setting up this committee and setting up this oversight, because the reality is that China's playbook instructs them to get into every fabric of our society and at every level be effective. And unfortunately, they are effective in many ways. Look at some of the influence that the CCP has had just over our education system. So I think it's good that governors are paying attention. I mean, our weakest points of infrastructure in the United States when it comes to cybersecurity are really our local and our state municipalities. That is really where Chinese hackers and CCP hackers and any adversarial hackers can get into our networks and start working their way up the chain. It's a lot harder to break into the DoD network than it is a local municipality that has contracts that they work with DoD on. And so I think that the state of Florida is very wise to do this.
Okay, so you bring up the CCP's influence. The Jamestown Foundation says it will be releasing a new report that maps out how more than 2,000 CCP-linked organizations in the country and others are involved in, quote, political influence, technology transfer, transnational repression, and voter mobilization. So can you just talk to us about this web of influence the CCP uses? What is the scope?
I was talking to some friends about this last night that, if you would have said any of these things that we're saying today 5 years ago, you would have been called a conspiracy theorist because, all of this sounds just so whimsical that it feels made up like it's in a movie. But the reality is that this is reality. This is China's playbook. The segment that you had prior to this was talking about China's nuclear arsenal. I'm worried about that, but I am so much more worried about the mental warfare campaign that the CCP inflicts upon the United States and, truthfully, the rest of the world in pitting our adversaries against each other. There is a reason that there were so many Confucius Institutes across the United States, and they got outlawed because we saw a direct effect of what was happening in our universities and in our education system with having the CCP influence on our students, and it needed to stop, and I'm glad that it did.
So what is the CCP's goal here with students? What is the long-term strategy here? And talk to us about, Chinese students and scholars associations in the U.S.
So really, there are two methodologies that you can have in any kind of mental warfare, and really, this is mental warfare, right? So you've got your overt strategies and you have your covert strategies, and really, what China is super good at is the covert strategies. If they were really focusing on the overt strategies, you wouldn't have Prime Minister Carney, in Canada, talking about how they wanted to ally and align themselves with China moving forward with this values-based realignment that he talked about in Davos not too long ago. And so really you're looking at these covert strategies and covert tactics. So what does that look like? It looks like mental manipulation. Our society, regrettably, is incredibly susceptible to influence from the outside world. Our youth, because of their involvement on social media, on web platforms where they have access to information all around the world, are incredibly susceptible to this influence. I wrote a series of articles for Independent Women at the start of last New Year about the TikTok ban. And, several of my friends are like, man, Taylor, you need to get over it. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of an influence. What a lot of people didn't realize is that the algorithms for TikTok in China, students were vastly rewarded for looking up videos and watching videos and promoting their algorithms focused on engineering, education, medicine, reading, literature. They were promoted and rewarded for that, while the same algorithms in the United States existed for United States students. They were promoted for doing TikTok dances and Tide Pod challenges, and their ratings went up for that. So that is just one example of a covert strategy that has direct effects on the mental capacity, truthfully, and on the educational abilities of our students.
Right, and I just want to add to that, the younger generation are the people that's going to eventually run this country, the United States, and that's very important as well. I also wanted to bring up today the CCP's transnational repression. So the attacks on the New York-based Shenyang Performing Arts Group, as an example. The CCP has engaged in misinformation operations using American platforms to misrepresent Shenyang publicly, and this is a company that in part exposes the human rights abuses happening in China. Can you just talk to us about the extent of influence the CCP has on our media? What are the broader implications of this, the CCP carrying out this repression in the United States?
I mean, you guys actually have a really good article or magazine piece in it that I encourage everyone to read. And if you have the link to that, I encourage your team to post it. But this is just basic gaslighting 101, right? This group exists to expose the horrors that happen inside of China, inflicted by the CCP. And what does China come out and do? They say they're CCP-oriented brands so that people don't want to watch it, so that they don't want to see it. So China has no problem calling out the atrocities of the CCP, right? They just do a really good job of delineating the difference between the CCP and Beijing. They're like, that isn't us, that's them, that's this group. And it is a very typical gaslighting tactic of an adversary to make you think that things really aren't as bad as they are when they are.
Okay, so how do we stop this transnational repression by the CCP?
First and foremost, you have to call a spade a spade. You have to call it out when you see it. I wrote an article recently about the number of students that come into the United States from China to study here, and the fact that they are focusing on engineering fields, and they're focusing on AI fields, and they are getting that training in the United States and taking it back to China. Economic influence or economic espionage cases committed by Chinese nationals have gone up 1,300% in the last decade. I mean, you've got trade theft secret cases happening in the United States, 60% are which are attributed to the CCP. And so the data is there and it shows it. It shows that we are educating these students and employing these students, and they're taking what they're learning here and they're using it against us in the United States. I need to be very clear that I am not vilifying all Chinese students. I do not think that is a problem here, but we need to create a better awareness pipeline to understand where these students' allegiance are. And I think the reality is people don't understand that when many of these students come here from China, they are given a very strict out processing from China interview and an in processing interview every single time they come home to make sure that they have not been too heavily influenced by the United States. To date, there are nearly 250,000 Chinese students studying at universities inside of the United States, and we have less than 1,000 American students studying inside of China. And China has great universities too, so it makes you wonder why that tactic, why is that being implemented and not the other way around if it really was a shared partnership among education institutions.
Okay, Taylor, just final question here. Taking a step back, looking more broadly here, how do you think the U.S. government needs to treat this problem, this CCP United Front work in the United States?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, you've got to be able to call it out. I think the CCP Select Committee is doing a good job with a lot of this work. I think that, people, independent journalists need to be calling out these situations. I mean, the fact that the biolabs that you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, that's not the first one that this has happened in, right? Like that's happened several times under the Biden administration, and the media was complicit in covering it up. Why would they be complicit in covering it up? I really encourage everyone to look at the funding mechanisms of some of these major news networks and see where their tiebacks to the CCP are. Alex Marlow has a really good book about this. I believe it's called Breaking the News, and I encourage everyone to read it, that talks a lot about why the media, legacy national media, is often complicit in these things. And just like with anything, it usually follows the money. So I think people just need to be educated. And this does not mean be racist, right? This does not mean look at everything with Chinese influence and think that's bad. That is absolutely inappropriate and not the way to handle this. But you need to be able to look at the data and look at reality. Look at the FBI scorecard sheets. Look at the House Oversight Committee scorecard sheets. Look at all of these threat fact books and do your research and understand why this is an issue, why China is an issue with us. And the last thing that I want to say is I want to remind people just how heavily involved the CCP has been in the United States fentanyl crisis in the last 10 years. They have been directly supplying not only the money laundering to make sure that the cartels are able to commit major atrocities leading to hundreds of thousands of American deaths, but they're also providing the precursor chemicals to be able to make these drugs and to make this fentanyl and to be able to have the cartels transported across the border. So it's not just the covert stuff that is endangering and risking American lives, it's the overt stuff too.
And we often talk to a guest, Casey Fleming. I don't know if you've seen him on our program before, but he says the CCP is waging a hybrid unrestricted warfare on the United States. He says, and the United States has not woken up to that just yet. Okay, I think we can leave it there for this week, Taylor. Thank you so much for your comments, as always.
Thanks, Don.
EU regulators have charged TikTok with violating online content rules over addictive features like infinite scroll and autoplay. The company could face fines of up to 6% of ByteDance's global turnover if changes aren't made.
The measures that TikTok has in place are simply not enough. Screen time management and parental controls are not properly working on TikTok. TikTok did not properly assess how its addictive features can harm users, and they did not implement effective measures to mitigate such risks.
The Commission set out its charges after a year-long investigation under the Digital Services Act. The charges focus on the app's addictive design, including infinite scroll, autoplay, and push notifications. EU regulators told the firm to change TikTok's build or risk a fine. The penalty could reach as much as 6% of owner ByteDance's global turnover. TikTok criticized the changes or the charges Friday and called the findings against it false and meritless. The EU regulator said TikTok didn't adequately address how these features could harm the physical and mental well-being of its users. It further accused TikTok of ignoring indicators of compulsive use of the app and said it hasn't brought in reasonable measures like screen time management tools and parental controls tools to prevent risks. The opening ceremonies for this year's Winter Games are going on right now. This year's Winter Olympics are dually hosted by Milan and Cortina, two towns over in northern Italy. Team USA sent more than 200 athletes there. It's their largest delegation ever. Among some of the well-known names are skiers Lindsey Vonn and Michaela Schifrin. Vonn enters despite a major knee injury, while Schifrin looks for redemption after getting shut out in the 2022 games. Meanwhile, in snowboarding, the U.S. boasts two-time gold winner Chloe Kim. Kim enters the competition coming off a major shoulder injury suffered just last month. And finally, the men's hockey competition will feature NHL players for the first time since 2014. Team USA men's team hasn't medaled since 2010, while the women's side looks for their 8th straight medal.